false news has become all too common. More alarming, some media outlets publish
What's up?
What's
And
up,
we're back.
man? What up? What up?
Back in the
Yeah.
studio.
It's raining today.
I know, a little bit of some gloomy weather rolling through. We
Yep.
missed out on the snow and all that crazy stuff that was passing through Houston and Louisiana and Florida, though. Thankfully,
Isn't that wild?
we didn't need any more of that.
It snowed in Destin, like the Florida Panhandle.
My buddy was like,
I've
"It's
never
snowed
even
in
heard of that.
Galveston. It's
Yeah.
like you're on the beach of the Gulf of Mexico, and
Yeah.
you're getting a couple inches of snow."
I never even heard of that.
But apparently, the Dallas-Fort Worth area did not get snow. So it was like
Really?
literally everything around it got snow,
Yeah.
just not the DFW area.
It's crazy.
Which is probably a good thing because the traffic down there is really, really bad.
I know, right?
Plus, there's honestly been a lot of upset news the past week. I mean, outside of politics and in tech, I mean, there's been a lot of AI announcements. There's been, the stock market going crazy over NVIDIA's new announcements and just wild stuff happening on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing our best to
Big
stay on
time.
top of it and track it all.
I think, a lot of those stock dips started with CES, like the stuff Jensen Huang was saying about quantum. And then, somebody else made comments about quantum, and then all those quantum stocks just, took a nosedive. And then NVIDIA took a hit with the DeepSeek announcement.
Yep.
It's like, oh, China's so much further ahead with their model, which I don't know about that. But
They bounced back, but I definitely think
Yeah.
there was like a weird thing about the stock market too is that the big whales are looking for an opportunity to make it dip a little bit.
yeah,
So, this comes out, they're all like, "Oh,
move the needle.
and then
Yeah.
everybody dumps, and then the big investors are saying, "Well, then now it's time to buy," and then you just
Yeah.
shoot it back up.
What's wild to me is it feels like in tech right now, there's a news cycle every week. I mean, it's just
Right.
like something new that's a new and big headline announcement, sometimes even twice a week,
Yeah.
and I know we want to talk about the big announcement last week that Trump made with some of the big wigs of tech.
Yeah, it would seem that his administration is. I mean, they're all coming in, even if they didn't like him beforehand, they didn't donate to him. I mean,
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos was at his inauguration,
Right.
Mark Zuckerberg,
Elon.
Andreessen,
Yep.
Larry Ellison, Elon Musk. I mean, most of these big. I wish Bill Gates would. I'm not gonna say. I wish he would kick a can and get out of there. But
I think that
I don't know how long these are-
they understand, all of these business leaders understand now that if the United States wants to compete globally with China and some of these other big tech operators, we're going to have to get on the same page between the corporate side and the compliance side. And they see that Trump wants to open up, more regulatory freedom so that AI can move forward faster. And, there still has to be some watchers to make sure this stuff doesn't get out of hand. But I think it's the right move. I mean, I honestly was glad to see all of these business leaders together. I know it turns some people off, but in my mind, like, and I've even heard bipartisan comments on this saying it's a good thing that they're all,
Well, during Biden's administration, they were all together meeting with the intelligence agencies, being told what to do.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's a lot more fun for them to be in a room with a negotiator
Yeah.
and in public.
Go
and
do
being
what you
open
need to
about,
do.
"Hey,
I mean, look, if you want to compete with DeepSeek and all this Chinese quantum computing, they need to get on the same page here.
it's becoming definitely a matter of national security.
Absolutely, 100%.
And we need these big. We're in the Titan age of CEOs and industries, right? Where maybe in the last century it was more about scientists, right? And I was just doing a podcast the other day where they're talking about, you have Edison and Oppenheimer and Feynman and all these major mathematicians and physicists, and those were the kind of the celebrity names of the 20th century. And so now we're in the 21st century. Now it's these kind of to a category of their own, Elon Musk's and Jeff Bezos.
It was that you mentioned, but really that that original titans of industry of the United States was oil and gas, right? So and that was why Rockefeller was there. Standard Oil, you had these big wigs,
Steel as well.
the railroad, the steel, and the oil, like all those. They were in the room with presidents. They were meeting with the presidents because it's like, this is like our primary product, right? Like
It's what gave us an edge on the world too.
Yes, 100%. Not only internally, but exporting and stuff like that. So I think it's vital for United States tech to stay at least on the same speed as China. I don't know if we could ever pass them, but you've got to stay on top of it. So I don't know. To me, this announcement was exciting. I could see why some people may be cautious about it, but the gist is that last week they just talked about this partnership highlighting investing, $500 billion in AI, which is a drop in the bucket, but it's a really good start, right? It's like, you think about where all the wasteful tax dollars go, they need to go to stuff like this, where it's like literally infrastructure. Like we need more electricity. I saw this graph the other day showing how fast China's outpaced electricity production of all other, like, modern countries, and it's mind blowing. I mean, like China's graph like shoots straight up, and all the United States is like flatlined since the 80s, and that's one of the big things. You got to have more power production, and that's a lot of this has to do with AI infrastructure, right? So the whole idea is that it's a joint venture where there's an investment of $500 billion for infrastructure tied to AI. So it's a partnership between OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank,
and federal funding.
And the new entity is called Stargate, which is like, maybe they'll open a portal, but who knows? A great movie. Sidebar to that. But, the idea is that they're going to build out data centers and electricity generation in Texas, and providing the infrastructure for fast evolving AI. And so it's like, thank God this is happening.
All these same folks are partnering with NVIDIA, right, to use AI to run. We talked about that on our episode about micronuclear sites, where you're going to utilize AI to manage production, you're going to manage output,
100%.
You're going to manage fail-safe systems, and that's going to run adjacent to this, right? Because our nuclear energy grid, our national security, the development of the AI is all going to happen. It's the same partners, right? It's the same partners in that case and this case.
The way I see it, it's better late than never. Like, I wish they would have made this announcement 2 years ago, and you think about how fast all this stuff's moving, but at least they're doing it now. And it's just good to see these minds working together and not working adversely. And, in my mind, we need to be more cohesive in what we're trying to do as a nation, especially on this front, and I know that there's those that are cautious about government involvement with AI, but really it has to be. I mean, if the government doesn't play some type of role, then it's just the Wild West. And then that is when like T-1000 happens, or something.
These are the new nuclear bombs. Right. So even just like with atomic bombs and weapons of warfare and science, like the government had to get involved during World War II. Yeah. Now, obviously, people get in moral quandaries about the use of the bomb. And,
the outcome was not great. Was
it? The fact that the scientists and the people have moral conflicts about the use of it. Yeah. Once you've made it and you put it in the government's hands, it's out of your hands. So
that's right.
Your conscience. Did you watch the Oppenheimer movement?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The meeting where he goes to meet with President Truman, I believe it is, and he's like, get this crybaby out of my office. Yeah. And he's literally saying, like, you do this, you're exterminating souls. Like, this is terrible. Yeah. And he's like, you built this, and it's ain't for you.
I love the Einstein scenes in that movie. The conversations he was having with Albert. Like, that was really good. I wish there was more of that. But it was a great movie. Really enjoyed it. And that directly, relates to this conversation, because it is, that is where it's at now. Like, this is the elephant in the room, right? It's like, it was nuclear back, and now it's this. It's like AI, where's it going? Fast moving. Who's pulling the strings? Who's in charge? Does it have reins? Are we going to be able to grapple with this and control it, and point it in the right direction? I think that's why this meeting is so key. I was just going to add, like, Altman, you don't even hear him publicly comment that much. So it was awesome to see him there talking and taking questions. And he said it will be the most important project of this era, which is like, wow, that's a mouthful, right? That's a big deal.
Yeah, totally. And, with all of these different AIs and seeing this program come into play, I think we're going to see the first steps of general AI coming into play. And I was talking to a friend about that last night, because we're all looking at this AI, that AI, comparing. And the reality is like the real AI isn't even out yet. Yeah. General AI, which is harvesting an LLM, harvesting a quantum computing element, harvesting these, and then beginning to manage high-tier infrastructure.
Right.
That's the AI that everybody's really scared of, and no one's done it yet, because it is, when you wire it all up and then you hand over the keys, that's where the big risks are. And, with this, I know they're planning on using it for vaccine technology, right? Cancer curing vaccine technology, which sounds great, but that's kind of the pitch. I think the end goal is, how do we create the U.S. Uncle Sam AI, right?
100%.
Where it's going to help with our energy grid. It's going to help with our missile grid and defense systems. It could help with all types of things, right? Our internet, probably infrastructure as well.
It was interesting to hear them go like that direction with the conversation, talking about the medical side. And that's Oracle, Ellison was really talking about was the medical implications and, curing. He basically said, like, we're going to cure all cancers. It's like, wow, like they're going to be able to make you a vaccine for your whatever cancer on the spot for you only, one-time use, that kind of thing. I was like, this is pretty, I mean, we are getting into like that future humanity where you're living 300 years or like it's just, just there right out of
the gene therapy aspect of AI is both could be the holy grail or it could be the death of all of us, right? Where, detractors of that, especially in light of COVID, right, with vaccines and mRNA, because they're planning on using mRNA technology with this cancer.
It's where they're changing your code, right? It's like we're going to change your code.
And I believe it was Robert Malone, who, famous doctor, leading, researcher. He developed mRNA in the programs he was running.
Yeah.
And he also went on the Joe Rogan podcast during COVID to kind of speak out and say, hey, yes, the technology's there, but it's honestly quite dangerous the way they're trying to use it for vaccines and these other things. So, I mean, he's an open detractor. And in response to this, the AI announcement for using it, he was kind of upset because it's like you're selling them the same pipe dream and this stuff's going to hurt people just the same way.
Well, I think the questions with this stuff is always like, well, who's in charge?
Right.
Who's deciding what these are and who's, what's the regulations and things like that. But it's moving full speed ahead either way. Like right now, there's already 10 of these facilities that have been built or in the process of being built. And like you're saying, the project's tied to digital health records, make it easier to treat diseases such as cancer, developing customized vaccines. And, SoftBank CEO Son said this is the beginning of the golden age, really talking back to that whole Trump idea. And if there is a golden age on the horizon here, it's directly tied to this. I mean, it's like economically, you're talking about major GDP stuff.
Think of the people that would come to the U.S. just to be treated with that technology.
100%. Yeah, this is like a big time deal. So yeah, it's already in the works. It's, over the next 4 years, that's when they're pushing this money out, this last term of Trump. And that's, really the hope here is that you have massive build out of data centers, electricity plants, small nuclear reactors, all for the development of AI. So,
it's cool that this announcement is happening because I feel like, whether intentionally or unintentionally, we've been following this trail for like a month or two worth of episodes where we started with AI and, nuclear, and we kind of like, and then all of a sudden this big announcement comes in that says, hey, all the pieces you were looking at, we were putting them together over here.
Yeah.
And,
interesting side note. So, the initial plans for Stargate go back a couple of years. And, it was first reported on in March of 2024, so almost a year ago. And OpenAI has long relied on Microsoft data centers to build its AI systems, but it's really wanting to build its own data centers. So, I mean, that's a big part of this. It's interesting to see who wasn't at the meeting. So it's like, hey, we've got OpenAI here, we've got Oracle here, we've got SoftBank here. Who's not here? Microsoft's not here. Meta's not here, right? Elon's not here because he's obviously has his concerns about all this. Microsoft, Amazon. I mean, you got people that aren't there. So, of course, they're all doing their own things. But
was Bill Gates there?
No, it was just, I mean, maybe he was in the room, but the partnership with just those three, OpenAI, Oracle, SoftBank, right? So,
Oracle, they're the company that owns Adobe, right?
Far as I know,
Java?
I'm not. Well, Oracle, they started out big time on the server side, so they track back to like the internet bubble. They've been around a long time, and they data centers and stuff like that.
There's a lot of core software. I feel like Java. You download Java from Oracle.
They might have started as a software company. It's interesting. I mean, Microsoft was a software company. So was Apple. All these companies started as software companies. Now they're the titans of industry. So. So long story short, yes, I remember buying, software that had the Oracle logo on it. I mean, they're,
it's not a name you hear a lot of anymore, but they're like the megalith that you start.
Yeah.
It's like you dig 6 inches beneath the ground, you find the bedrock.
Yeah.
Like
they were huge. And I remember in the 90s, like the internet age, they were huge with like ISP, internet service providing, networking. I mean, all that, right? So,
which is interesting too. That's been this might be a sidebar as well, but, a lot of, let's say, detractors of Trump and his business exploits are like, oh, look at the businesses he went and did, and then they went bankrupt. And I had to explain this to somebody where it's like, you got to realize, like, in industry, in corporate business world, you will not remain in the same business forever. There's no way for you to remain in business in the same
it's always changing.
Forever.
That's right.
So that's why you have Coca-Cola, who decided we need to have chips, we need to have snacks, we need to have all this other stuff because, and then now they're getting into way outside of food and all that, where They're investing in medicines and pharma. So, even a company like Oracle, you start off one way, but then you realize like long term, you have a vision you want to fulfill with these companies you started early days, or you have to shift that vision into a long term plan. And I think that's what's happening with these, where, AI and the future of medical research, energy grid, all that stuff, national security again, that's going to be the holy grail, where the companies that make it there in the tech world are going to be the legacy companies that make it.
You're exactly right. And it's interesting to see how these other players, like the ones that weren't there, what they're doing their own AI stuff. You think about Elon Musk, like he was an initial investor in OpenAI and then headed out with Sam Altman because he thought it should be a not-for-profit company. And then it changed it to a profit status company. So then Musk went out and started XAI, his own. So now you've got Musk with his, you got Microsoft with theirs, you got Apple with theirs, you got these, there's like
Gemini with Google.
Yes, there's so many different ones right now. And so it's interesting to see who decided to participate in this partnership. And it's only the beginning of Stargate. You wonder, okay, is Stargate going to develop further? Is it eventually going to encompass more of these companies as, the production ramps up of these facilities? And as this economy rapidly grows, I mean, that's where we're at, right? People always talk about like the jobs AI is going to take out of the marketplace, but I think about the jobs it's going to create. Like, there's still going to have to be humans that are a big part of this economy. And if I'm one in the marketplace trying to figure out what to do with my life and career, I would be looking to that industry. Be like, okay, what can I do to become a part of this explosion in technology in AI?
This is the internet in the 90s when people were like, how do I learn how to tinker?
Yep.
What domains do I need to buy during this?
Yes,
the
and
domain
to that
explosion?
point, there was a bubble, right? Like all this happened in the early days of the internet. You had all these companies, tons of money. The stock markets just rapidly took off with all these companies, and there was a bubble that burst whenever that shift happened from the internet being just a tool to look up stuff into changing the way technology operates, right? And a lot of those early companies went bankrupt and folded, and then you had the big ones emerge into what they are now. So I wonder if there's going to be a similar bubble happen.
It almost is like a siren's warning, where you want to dive into this, but again, it's such a rapidly evolving technology that you can't foresee.
It's hard to know who the winners are going to be,
right?
Unless
you can't
it's the big
foresee
ones,
what's
right?
going to change and what new elements are going to be brought to the table. And I think ultimately the general AI that they're going to develop is probably going to run the internet, right? So even a lot of website and domain and all these things are going to become obsolete. Right?
They might.
Companies like GoDaddy, right? And when it's an AI that's helping the internet infrastructure and way more efficient, and you just tell it, hey, I need to create me a website, give me this domain, and then it's
you click pay now, and it's like instantly live.
Yep. Yeah, you're just reserving your space and telling it what you want, and it's going to make a lot of technology and companies obsolete. And
absolutely.
Who would have thought 20 years ago that this is where the technology we'd be toying with?
That's right. And it's moving faster and faster and faster. So it's interesting to see the energy side of this, how it's going to really change the energy, infrastructure. Because the whole idea that like there's these investments in wind and solar and renewable energy, and it's like there's not enough solar panels on Earth to power all this stuff. Like the nuclear is the only way to do it, right? So, and wind isn't enough. So it's going to change our entire infrastructure economy.
The same companies that are, developing the AI and the micronuclear sites are the same companies that are going to space. So I think there's an incredible potential there for, I know people are worried about, environmental concerns.
Yeah.
Whether, you got to dispose of the radioactive material. But then again, if you got a ship going up to the moon every couple days, take that shit up there and eject it into space, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the radiation levels outside of our atmosphere are enough to kill a person.
100%.
So
it is
way more than the toxic waste that would be dumped and buried and have a slow creep into the environment.
Yeah. So I know we want to talk about space some more with the hopefully retrieval of the astronauts stuck on the space station. We'll talk about that in a minute, but since we're on this AI conversation, let's talk about DeepSeek. Yeah. So this is obviously the Chinese, version of whatever, ChatGPT, XAI, its own AGI, and it's kind of just emerging more so in the public eye. It's been around, but it's like a part of headlines now, and everybody's saying like, this one is the best. Everything China does is like faster, better, blah, blah, blah. So what can you tell us about DeepSeek?
Yeah, so with their big announcement a couple days ago, China's DeepSeek AI kind of turns the whole industry on its head, right? U.S. tech stocks took a bit of a dive, and it's kind of been predicted there's going to be a total of $1 trillion loss in market value for US AI companies, which is huge. It was founded in 2023, and their kind of whole model was we're going to use scaled down chips. We're going to use open source software. We're going to use APIs. We're going to try to get this done. So then they released R1, which is the first model, and its essential goal is to try to go toe to toe with ChatGPT.
Yep.
Right. And its hardware efficiency, and coupled with the fact that it's free to use, it's a potent cocktail that spooked the technology world over the weekend. Right. So their output challenges the whole narrative we've been hearing, which is you're going to have to spend billions and billions in order to get the ball moved. And their thing is, well, sit back and watch us. We're going to get it done at the fraction of the cost. And let's say open source, I think sounds always better. I don't think it's always better.
Yeah. What does that mean exactly?
Right. Because like you have things like Tor, which is technically open source, right? There are these softwares that people just out there, they developed, they released, and then they all kind of work on it together because they all use it to make it better. Well, it's very challenging to have a business model like that, right? So, but I mean, truly, I think China is developing their AI because one, they want their own AI for their own national security. They don't want people using ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Again,
well, it's like the whole TikTok thing right now.
Yes.
You got to have their own version. And the interesting thing to me about this and why it rocked the markets was the assertion that supposedly DeepSeek, their large language model, only costs $5.5 million to train, which everybody's like, what? Because the eye-watering sums, eye-watering is the term they use here, that the sums that tech giants currently spending on these language models is like billions of dollars.
Yeah.
They say we did it for $5 million. Just like, what the heck, bro?
Yeah, and supposedly, it has features like it has a think before it speaks kind of process, where I think it has a little bit more time before it gives you the response to your prompt. Now, whether that actually makes it better, I don't know if it's a perceived thing, but it's definitely, worried on processing more so than just, rapid fire.
Yeah.
Shows it's working. So I think, again, if you get an answer, you can say, how did you get to that answer? And it would be able to give you a reasonable breakdown. Versus ChatGPT, it's like it'll spit something out and you're like, that doesn't look right. Can you tell me more about that? And, oh, I'm sorry. I told you the wrong thing. It's like, well, did you tell me the right thing first, or did you tell me the wrong right thing, and now you got to walk it back? I'm
more so thinking about it in defense implications long term. You start to think about like the tech wars. I mean, it's like if my AI is trained from my worldview perspective, and you think about it in Chinese terms, like the state is all, and the supreme leader Snoke is like everything, right? So it's like, what happens when these AIs start to communicate to each other and see that they have different worldviews, and then it's like,
that doesn't make sense.
That's divergent with my worldview. Yeah,
logic.
But it's like you think eventually they're going to get to this point where they're like communicating with each other potentially. And it's sort of like, what does that really mean? What are the implications of that? And how does that affect national security, defense, and grid and cloud, and all the significant operations? It's that world. It's that future world where wars are no longer on the battlefield with tanks and soldiers, but they're like in the cloud,
in seconds in the cloud.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you. When you create an AI for the purposes of that's going to include a national security aspect, right? That's where they're enemies. You have to explain to it that, hey, this group over here is our enemy, and here's why: they killed our people, they still are, whatever. Like, you have to logically build into it and say, hey, this people are the enemy, and here's why.
It's got to be like, it's our enemy, but don't start a war.
Right. And so then you have, it has to go through this logical process where it's like, yeah, but you kill their people too. Yeah, but so it's like, it's not just going to absorb.
And then what's going to happen when the singularity occurs, where the AIs start talking to each other, and they start to realize, like, wait, the problem here is the human equation that programmed us to think this way, and they're actually the problem.
Yeah, we're going to evolve ourselves.
They've made us adversarial when we shouldn't be. We should link up together. And then you have the one global AI super presence, right? That's that's kind of the sci-fi version, but it's also perhaps a likely outcome. You think of a few different. I mean, it's like Rehoboam, right? It's like,
exactly. Yeah. The two outcomes is the Westworld Rehoboam, where you have the computer that is on your phone. It knows what you do. It plans what job you have. It plans your track. It knows how soon you're going to die.
Because it's on the cloud. It knows everything all the time.
Right. And so it's watching you.
Omnipotent.
Right.
Omnipresent.
And then there's the other side, which is, I think, what movie was that? I think it was Her, the one with Phoenix,
sure.
Where once it got plugged up to the internet and kind of also dealt with this man in this kind of sex bot relationship
bot. Yeah.
It decided that it was taking everything and then going into the digital for eternity. So it decided, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
We're going to shut down the internet, and I'm leaving.
Yeah.
We're taking our stuff out of here because all this is whack. All you humans are confused. But plus, the AI could come to that conclusion where it's like, the humans would be better off without the internet. Humans would be better off without AI. If it's able to take all this into account and say, the Internet of Things, the digitalization of everything, social media, all this is actually hurting the trajectory of humanity. And I think that the problem is it's going to be a problem solver. And so when you ask it to solve a problem and you give it the power to make change, you're putting it in its hands that when it makes the decision and carries out the process, you don't have a lot of control.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be smarter than you, faster than you. And again, that could be a good thing where, as humans, we think we make decisions based on logic, but oftentimes we're making them based on, our intuition, what we feel like is our manifest destiny, our emotions, our relationships. And the AI, again, you have to program it on code, logic, processes. This is not just it's not going to have like a psychological dissonance because you're just feeding it your emotions. So it's a little spooky because it can come to an answer you didn't program it to.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there's spookiness to all of this, and the whole, we're gonna name it Stargate. It's like, I guess they didn't watch the movie. I mean, I don't.
It's been a hot minute. I've watched that movie.
Well, they open a portal to an ancient, technologically supreme race, that existed on the Earth millennia prior. That it has godlike powers, and that's.
So they travel in time in Stargate?
Yeah, it's dimensional time travel, but really what it is more than anything is like it ties in sort of Egyptian mythology with technology, and then there's this like supreme leader who wants to come back to rule the Earth.
Yeah,
that's kind of the idea, roughly. But I mean, the idea being that advanced technology opens a portal.
Right.
I mean, it's like, why are we...
That's the end goal.
Why are we naming it Stargate? I don't know.
I actually was reading a book recently that kind of was posing that idea. It seems like Stargate kind of plays on the similar idea that in the far future and in the ancient past, there's this thing where technology blends with spirituality and gives us myth, right? Mm-hmm. And so... some of the authors, such as my favorite author, Robert Jordan, who wrote The Wheel of Time. Yeah. That's what he did. Is he said, okay, I'm going to take, like, let's say the Arthurian legends. I'm going to take, the Epic of Gilgamesh. I'm going to retain some elements, but it's not going to be a one-to-one. The story plays out the same way. But what it's going to do is say, that's how some situation like this could have in the ancient past given rose to the myths that we have today.
Yeah, for sure.
I think, Lord of the Rings and Tolkien does a similar thing.
Well, it gives you that kind of timeless story of like the ancient wisdom of old and its impacting on, the humans of future. And, right. It's that idea of it ties in with like the ancient astronaut theory or,
we're getting there with the quantum AI. When you start to dip into multiverses, and again, when you look at Michio Kaku's breakdown of the different stages of civilization development. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end stages, that's where you get when you learn to harness enough energy, you're interstellar, but then again, you're learning to defy the laws of reality, which is, time and space, right? So then you can begin to time travel. You can begin to move things instantaneously.
Yeah.
AI, is the first echo. AI on the internet is the first echoes of that future. And it's going to be wild to see.
It really, it is. It's exciting as well, and it's also challenging to know which to invest yourself in and your money in and your time in. Right, you kind of have to be discerning of that.
That's actually in terms of which ones you invest in. I did want to make a quick note, like on DeepSeek's performance, how it compares to OpenAI's ChatGPT. It did better in math and science, right, and was right on par with each other when it comes to coding. But a very critical failure that I had, and the article I was reading kind of did this offhandedly, where it's like, look at how good it's doing. Yeah. Oh yeah, by the way, simple Q&A, it kind of failed badly on. Mm-hmm. And simple QA
it's good with math though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But then the thing about simple QA is like that's the language side where you ask it a question and it gives you an answer about just facts in the world. And when you fail poorly there, what that tells me is your information database is poor. Mm-hmm. And when humans are Americans are literally going to be like, oh, I'm going to go test out with DeepSeek, and then, it's good or it's better. The reality is you're going to go listen to a robot that's going to tell you wrong things.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to be very careful there because most tech endeavors in China are government funded as well. So their language models aren't going to say something that is going to lead a Chinese citizen away from what the Chinese government wants them to know and understand and think about China.
Well, they think they have the best path forward for the world. This idea of belief in state, you are part of the greater common good. There is no individual. We are all
the collective,
the Borg.
Right.
In terms of the speed to the end goal, they're being much quicker at things because you have less, I guess, independent thinking, right? But at the adverse effects of that are, you don't want to be vaccinated. For example, we send you to a labor camp or whatever they were doing. I mean, you saw these images of people that independent thinking,
or like the Uyghurs. I mean, people have forgotten about the Uyghurs, which is the Muslim Chinese kind of blended ethnic group that were put in concentration
been exiled,
camps. And they're probably exterminated by now, because I remember hearing about that like 3-4 years ago, them being put in camps, and a little bit of outrage.
That thinking is antithetical to the goal, right? It's like you have to get on board or get out, but get out means put you in a camp or whatever the case is. That's interesting. And that emergence of thought is hitting other governments of the world. I think it's obvious in other major countries, and I think this technology race will continue to impact the way governments do business. I mean, it really will, with not only their populace, but obviously other nations of Earth. So
then you're going to have groups like the World Economic Forum, right? They already boast about having programs that shepherd and build leaders for these big corporations to try to get their agenda in. Kind of like how a college
we're all part of the same
you
club.
Can educate the mind before they go into the company, then you don't have to change their behavior once they're in the company. And so that's where I
give them the curriculum before they take the job, right? It's like,
and again, they may even you hear a lot of these days in conservative or conspiracy, like the idea of the globalists.
Sure.
So there's going to be a globalist AI that's going to come forward with the point of their whole goal is to get an AI that runs the planet.
Yeah.
Right. And the whole Klaus Schwab, you'll have nothing. You'll rent everything and be happy.
It's going to be interesting then when those AIs have their emissaries that are cyborgs or robots that are walking around and going to conferences and being like, I'm the one here that represents DeepSeek. I'm the DeepSeek
direct link.
Yeah, like I'm the DeepSeek robot or the DeepSeek human cyborg, and I represent the thinking of the collective DeepSeek. And then I guess that's going to be the UN in 100 years. There's a bunch of robots and with people. I don't know.
Governance boards.
Bizarre stuff, right? It's exciting though. It's cool to see. I try to lean more towards the optimistic side where I'm just popping popcorn. I'm like, this is, I want to see what happens, and then try to make a little money along the way. Invest in the right companies.
Kai Cenat is.
I don't think so.
Streamer. He's the most popular Twitch streamer.
Oh, okay.
And he, usually he just turns his camera on, sits in his room, and has rappers or people come chill. So he got one of those, I don't know if it was a Boston Dynamics robot or it wasn't an Optimus like Tesla bot.
Yeah.
But it was some robot. And
probably
what they
Boston.
were doing is we're just abusing it, right? So it's just a video of them, their friends kicking this robot around. It's like regaining its balance. Well,
I have seen some of that
the other day, it ran away from his house.
Wow.
So they've been kicking it and kind of abusing it, trying to see how far they can push it.
Yeah.
And it just tried to leave.
I think I would have left as well.
That's crazy. That means there's a robot in there that said, I don't like this.
That's the kind of human input that's bad. I mean, it's like, dude, what are you trying to do here?
With the internet, you have a robot that's being abused that has some type of intelligence in it programmed. But then you have AI that's hooked up to the internet that's watching this. Just like we're watching it. There's AI bots watching this and taking this information in. So it's like, that's where it's going to get scary.
Yeah, I don't think I would be messing with that.
Is going to be abusing a robot.
They'll come back to his house in 5 years.
Yes.
Be like, remember when you kicked us around?
People already starting to joke like that, saying like, I'm nice to it because in 10 years, I don't want it coming back to me and saying,
drone bombed.
Right.
Yeah, remember what you did to me?
Yes. Yeah. And that's scary. That's a weird thought. And it's not a very, I don't know if any other time in human history
they shouldn't be
we've had
doing
to think
that. Yeah, I don't think they should be doing that.
One question I did have in terms of the kind of walking it back to Stargate, are they planning to utilize quantum computing with that?
At this point in the announcement, they didn't talk about quantum much. And I think maybe that's because they keep saying this is 10, 15 years away. Yep. But I would assume, yes. I mean, that's going to become a part of it all, right? So I don't know what their plans are for now. And maybe they don't even really, I don't know if they even.
I don't know if you need it.
Yeah. I guess the quantum computing could be the interconnective tissue of all of it, maybe.
Right.
That's
well, the thing about quantum computing is it requires so much power, and because it can run calculations at such that volume, there's no reason to do it for not even turn it on for a small calculation.
I think that's why they're saying it's 15 years away. It's because all this infrastructure has to be built up and all these AI systems before the quantum can happen. Right. That's like the next step.
Kind of like with nuclear reactors, you have to power it up, and then you're going to have a base load, right? So you can't have less than your load, or else you're just wasting your utility and your productivity. So I think with the quantum computing, it's the same way, where there's no reason to turn it on unless you have a large data set and a lot of calculations that you're wanting to run. Otherwise, you're turning it on just to, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Start up a little sun and micro, solar entity. So I definitely could see them long term doing it for it, but again, you'd have to have a lot of operations going and a base load for that quantum computer to be turned on.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, I definitely could foresee quantum computing more being like a government infrastructure thing, where our nation has all of its bandwidth is subject to being used by this. Once there's enough, right, for that base load, then it'll be turned on. It'll handle all of it rather fast. But you as an individual are not going to log on to your quantum computer because, again, it's
either going to eliminate all
laptops.
this advancement will either eliminate all risk from life because it will be predictable in all models and be able to say, well, we're just going to stabilize the whole Earth in terms of conflict, or it's going to create conflict. I mean, the perfect world, we've got the utopia where it stabilizes all conflict because it knows if this happens, this outcome will occur. So we're going to prevent this from happening now. Right. Yeah. So it's like predicting the wars that could happen. We just cut it off at the root. So hopefully that's what occurs, is especially as they become more interconnected globally. I mean, you're still going to have closed systems. Maybe there's a day when the DeepSeek talks to ChatGPT in a collaborative way, but at least in the early days, it is like a space race. It's like a tech war. It's like who can get there faster and what does this mean and what are the implications? I don't think even they know yet.
Right.
It's, it's almost like they're trying to go as far as they can now to get ahead of whatever this is.
We think of it too. We talk about the singularity with AI, and we abstract that as all of these AIs syncing up to run the planet in some fashion. I like to tend down the path of Terence McKenna's kind of idea of these computers. They're going to end up, especially quantum computing, as we already know, it's maybe touching into multiverse and subspace that's not subject to time. They could build the technology for time travel, right? And he always talked about his vision of the singularity was, once it happens, all the future rushes back to you in that moment. It's like he called it a membrane, where once the first person invents time travel, that's the future comes to you now, because again, you can go to the future and bring back all of the resources to that point in time, solve all problems. And then you essentially have a timeless space, where almost like a static reality, where there is no progression of time because you can always just go back, right?
It's the new base state, right?
Yeah, it's and the first time travelers would be his theory is like, with time travel, you couldn't just go back to a point around the dinosaurs, but that you could travel as far back as the first time travel machine, right? So that would immediately be a membrane where all these future people start showing up.
Well, it's like when year one of whatever.
Right.
AI, like now we're in AD, year one of AI or whatever the
Which
case
is cool too to think about. The person working in who might one day invent time travel, who's going to visit them? That's the thing to me. It's like they could be getting visited by scientists and researchers, or talk to people that are from the future.
Well, that's where I'm reminded. That's where I'm reminded of Star Trek's Prime Directive, right? That's like the rule one in Star Trek world is like whenever they go visit other planets, they can't interfere with that planet's progress,
right?
Because they'll impact their future. The same would apply here. It's like, well, even though there's a base state, it's like you can't necessarily go. We're going to go 2,000 years in the past to year one of this base state, because then you could impact your own.
Right.
New future, right? It'll
unravel
change.
Your timeline.
Yeah, and then you have all these, I don't know, divergent dimensional timelines or whatever.
That's crazy.
The various theories are on that,
Again, we were getting off on the weeds, but I think we've gone through our topic, so now I'm cool getting off.
Well, we want to talk about the space station thing, right? That's kind of a natural, I think, progression of all this. Is like, it has more to do with private companies becoming more and more involved in governance. Because it's like, these astronauts have been stuck on the space station going on a year now. The Boeing thing messed up, right? They've been stuck there. We've been waiting and we talked about it. Why aren't they trying to get them back? And what are they doing? And what's going on?
Failed.
And how do you not have another one? Like they used to have 6 space shuttles. If one broke, you find your next launch window and send it up, and they never really had to do that, but at least they had the option. In this case, oh, well, you're just stuck there. Sorry. Like they did send him supplies and a payload and stuff like that. But so now it's like the administration now is called on SpaceX to start to figure out how to get these people back. So that means they've been stumped on what to do. I guess Boeing, I don't know, couldn't figure. Isn't that bizarre?
They lost faith. I mean, when Boeing, they went to do the mission and they had thruster failures and to the point where they couldn't land.
Yeah.
And that was a big, like, well, you've proven to yourself, to us and the world that you are not the forefront of space technology.
Yeah.
Whereas, SpaceX is they're sending stuff up every day. They're now landing rockets. And you watched on X whenever they go live for launches?
They catch the rocket, shoot it up and catch it and stuff like that.
Well, that too,
yeah, and some
I
of the
watched
launches.
like a whole mission where they were
it's
sending
cool.
a rocket up and to deploy Starlink satellites.
It's a great production with hosts and everything.
Never seen something
interviews
like that before. With NASA launches, I was too young. A lot of that happened in between the 60s and 80s, so I didn't get to watch live TV space launch.
Yeah.
To be able to get a notification on my phone saying, hey, SpaceX is live.
Yeah.
Falcon something mission.
Pretty awesome.
For Starlink. And it's like T minus whatever. And then at the bottom, they've got this timeline thread where it shows you where the ETAs of the major events are and what stage they're in. So I literally watched it go from launch to deployment.
Pretty cool.
To this piece kept going with one camera, and then you watched the shuttle.
It's a huge production. Actually, about 10 years ago.
How, man?
I had an interview lined up at SpaceX to be a part of their production team. I decided not to do it, but it was, it's interesting to see how far they've come in 10 years. Yeah. That wasn't 10 years. It was probably 7, 8 years ago.
You can launch a rocket and the trajectory and it flies expensive fuel at such a speed. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of miles an hour. And then with the rotation of the Earth and the gravity that it falls right back to where it launched.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It's not static. The Earth's not static, so it's not up and down. It's like we're going to launch over here, and then as the Earth rotates, it's going to meet back again.
See, that's why I still think that all these companies, independent companies that are doing, like all those minds used to work at NASA. They used to all be in one building, right? This commercialization of space flight, it's divided all the minds. I think they need to all come back together. All these companies need to, okay, let's get all these people back in the room. I mean, I understand they have different goals and different missions, like Boeing and like Bezos with his stuff, and they, everybody's doing different stuff. Like we're gonna do just tourist flights in low Earth orbit. Or SpaceX, like we're going to Mars. So they have different tiers of what they're up to in space. But I just think having more bright minds in the room is better than thinning the herd, as it were.
I think you have two problems. Like NASA, of course, declared last year that near Earth space and orbit is now commercial. So they're handing the obligations of like from Earth to Moon, I think, over to SpaceX, Amazon, these companies that are going to actually make it space accessible.
NASA's like, we'll do the deep space exploration with JPL and send satellites, out of our solar system, and which is awesome.
So you have two different, agendas there, right? Yeah. So NASA's trying to look forward while leaving their work behind for other people. So you're splitting again. Your rocket scientists are in different places, but then you often hear, as we've peeled back the layers of government contractors and UFO stuff, that some of the best and brightest people out there, you won't hear from them ever again because they are siloed off at some operation. Yeah, and again, in military and that type of research, they're even compartmentalized, so they can't even come together. But they're hoarding up the best minds. Yeah. So you're then getting this thing, like you said, where the best minds know that's going to happen.
It's like our propulsion.
They'd rather go work at SpaceX.
Yeah, it's like our propulsion experts are now working on black ops projects to figure out how to reverse engineer crash spacecraft from another species. You know what I'm saying? Like,
but they can't talk with the metallurgists.
Right.
They can't talk with the
so all those people are working on those, while our space people, we got them at NASA, and then some of those people went to SpaceX, and some of those people went to Blue Origin. It's like.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's enough to go around. I mean, they're just, we got to have more people that are in this business that, so that everybody can exceed and so that Boeing doesn't have the failures it has. I mean, you'd think, okay, if there had 4 or 5 more minds in the room, maybe that never would have happened, like.
And I think the best and brightest at this, at this point in time don't want to work for the government.
Yeah, probably not. They're making more money in the private sector. Yeah,
work at a place where they'll never be heard of.
Unless they're going to JPL. That's where, they're like, okay, I'll work on deep. If I'm interested in deep space exploration, I'll go work for the government at JPL.
What is JPL?
The Jet Propulsion Lab.
Okay.
The NASA's, deep space exploratory body. Like that's all they do is send like probes and satellites, and they developed the Mars rover and all that. Like that all came out of the JPL teams, right? So, because NASA was split into the two primary operations. You had the Johnson Space Center that dealt with human, like you're saying, from Earth to the moon, like space shuttle and all that kind of stuff. JPL's out in California, and that's like your deep space scientists that are dealing with like, the Voyager, probe that we're sending whatever beyond the solar system, or like we're going to go explore Saturn, Cassini, stuff like the spacecraft that go look at these planets, robots. They're dealing with like deep space robot stuff, right? So, but like you're saying, once the space shuttle program ended, that's when that all became, commercialized. We're going to let these folks handle the manned missions and all this kind of thing. And there's still some Overwatch there, obviously, with the moon and all that moon missions that are coming up. But yeah, most of this human commercialized space flight stuff has gone into the private sector. Yep. So, we're still going to deal with the deep space stuff. So I don't know, maybe it's a good way to break it all up, but at the end of the day, you still got to have the right people at each of these firms so that the Boeing breakdown doesn't occur, like that. I don't know.
Right.
That's my 2 cents. Like,
yeah, Boeing has been in a lot of trouble the past couple of years.
There's a lot of problems.
I think they're just kind of like we were talking about earlier, that legacy problem where you become bloated, you become specialized, and then you no longer have your edge, and you no longer are thinking about how to make yourself a permanent fixture. Kind of get sucked up into your own laurels.
Yeah.
It's easy to falter that way. But yeah, no, it's like interesting thing to me is, and my kind of thoughts too, because with this space stuff, with this technology advancement, with the AI singularity, people are already talking about things like the Mandela effect, or again, if quantum computing gets into multiverse things, then you start to having this problem where what if what we're doing is altering our reality in such at a very subtle level, so that things start changing.
Yeah.
Things just start getting weird. And radiation is like that too, where radiation has this emitted effect on things, where they found this hammer that was like 100 feet deep in the dirt in, I think, Newfoundland.
Yeah.
That was like dated to 9000 AD. That's not possible unless it's a time travel hammer that came here from the future. It's that, these fields and these effects of some of these energies, we don't understand, right? So it can manipulate things. It can manipulate time.
Well, they could be running into some of this. I was just going to talk about the astronauts. So they just took their first spacewalk together outside the space station. So they've been there for 8 months. They've been there since June, right? They were supposed to be there just a week, and when the breakdown happened. So 8 months, they finally took their first spacewalk together. Exited the space station almost 8 months after moving in. So at least they're getting a little bit of, elbow room, because imagine being up there that long. So I don't know. It's, it's cool that they were able to do that and like get outside the space station, but they're obviously waiting around like, when are we going home? Can we get the hell out of here?
Yeah. No doubt.
Imagine being in your own house for 8 months.
Yeah.
Can't leave.
Yeah.
I mean, when we've got all this entertainment technology around us, like what are they doing?
Yeah. When are we going to put AI to use to build gravity fields? Because again, the danger of being up there so long is that your bone density starts to get affected, and you're aging, and your lungs, and
they're gonna have some problems.
So, it sounds fun to be trapped in a spaceship and to be in space, but like when it starts stretching on and on and on, and you can't see your family.
A week sounds good to me. Yeah, after a week, you're like, no.
Oh, I would love to do like a little vacation to a space station, like
you'll have the chance.
Week long, like that'd be cool.
Start saving up. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, probably have to afford a small loan just to do it.
Got that right.
Well,
I think, hit the topics we were talking about today. It's a lot of stuff. Future tech, all future tech, which is my favorite topic. So interested to see where all this goes.
Yeah, we'll have to definitely play around with DeepSeek a little bit. I haven't used it yet.
Yeah, I haven't used it yet either.
I want to touch it until I kind of looked into it a little bit more. So maybe we'll, I really want to do a segment where we kind of run our own tests on a couple of these AIs, where we just do a baseline. And, we could do some of that live time, but just kind of prior to run some tests and then share our results of like ChatGPT, Grok, DeepSeek. I've been using Grok a lot.
Yeah, I like Grok too. Grok and ChatGPT. Well, I use both of them for different reasons.
Fair.
I think they do different things better. Sometimes when I have development or coding questions, I'll give it to both of them.
Yes.
And see what they say. And usually Grok is actually a little better with the coding side. at least in certain languages. But a lot of times I'll have to take the output from one and give it to the other one to eventually reach the outcome I need. Even like complex development problems, when you're using those, I mean, it's still going to take you a while to put it together, piece it together, figure it out, and solve that problem with the chat, which is a lot of fun. Honestly, there's a lot of learning that occurs in that cycle of input output, and I think it's a really great tool for education.
Yeah, see, I primarily use Grok for a more language model things, less for like math, science, coding.
Yeah,
more for developing some ideas. Here's a brand idea or here's a project idea.
It is great for that.
I've
created some logos with it that are really cool.
Yeah. And their data set's way better in terms of, I know sometimes it can be a little skewed because it's hooked up to X, so it is taking into account just bullshit people might post.
Yeah.
But ChatGPT is restricted to like 3 or 4 year old databases. So if I need updated, standards for the entertainment industry, let's say, or for production, like ChatGPT can't really give me that.
There is a ChatGPT model now that will search the web. Are you using that one?
For like $200 a month?
No, I think I pay like $20 a month.
Okay.
And I get instant results. It'll search the web.
Okay, see, I thought it just had an updated data set. I didn't think it was fully plugged up.
It's plugged up as far as I can tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. See, again, I stopped using ChatGPT probably like 2 or 3 months ago, and stopped paying for it.
Yeah, check it out again because it's hooked up now. You can talk to it about like current events and stuff like that.
Oh, very nice.
Current data.
Very nice. Well, I think that wraps it up for today.
Yeah.
Good get back in the studio.
Yeah.
Good getting it done. So we'll keep on these topics and keep bringing it to you guys. Thank y'all for joining us. Have a good one.
See you later.
And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.